in the past 30 years, we have come leaps and bounds in the technology front. And yet not nearly as far as I think I had envisioned or Bill had hoped that day. Because 30 years in the state known for the best technological advances in so many other ways, and yet we still don't have enough options in terms of personal transport to help the clean air. So Bill's dad, William Leonard, for whom the center is named, served on the California Transportation Commission from 1973 to 1977, and then was reappointed by Governor Deukmejian in 1985 and served till 1993. And he did a couple terms as chair of that. He was a man of great accomplishments in a lot of areas of life and tied to so much of what happened here in San Bernardino County and the city of San Bernardino. And I think at the end of his life, he was looking forward to what's the next century going to bring? How's it going to be different than what he saw over that last century? And that's what I want your minds to go to this morning, and that's what I'd love the Leonard Transportation Center to focus on. And having talked with the family and understand some of what went into his idea of funding this, I want to remind us of the principles of transportation that guided his thoughts and decisions, and suggest that they are the kind of principles that need to guide the decisions and the research of this center from here forward, and would indeed do good for all of us policymakers and staff to think about as we make transportation decisions. The first is that our transportation system needs to be customer oriented. And yet too often we think of it from the top down, the planning perspective. What are we going to do for these people who are in our region? Well, these people make decisions every day about what's best for them. And we are foolish if we ignore their decisions and say, oh, we know better. We've got a better way to do it. And most recently, that better way to do it seems to be a focus on get out of your car and get on a bus or a train. Well, our customers, our consumers, our residents, our constituents, they're speaking very loudly. That is not the choice they want to make. And it doesn't matter how pretty you make the buses, and it doesn't seem to even matter how fast you make the trains, though we still haven't built that super speed train to Vegas. They want the flexibility, the independence, the comfort, the safety of their own vehicles. Now, you can mock that as the culture of Southern California, and you can disparage it and talk about how wrong they are and look to cities elsewhere on the East Coast and say, but see how they do it? That is not who we are. And to try to impose that on people by nature of taxation systems and policies from the top is crazy, because you're fighting a losing battle. We ought to be taking our brain power and our money and figuring out how do we make the individual car more efficient and better, both for the consumer and for society as a whole. How do we make that car cleaner? How do we make it more efficient? How do we adapt our roadways and our parking systems and all that to accommodate the choice that people are making every single day? How many of you drove here this morning in your own car? Who took the bus? You can ask that question over and over again in any room, in any organization in the Inland Empire, and the answer will be the same. It is time that we stop trying to change people's life choices and help make their life choices more efficient and better in the ways that we can. But we've spent so much time trying to change people's minds and redesign the entire culture of Southern California that we have wasted decades. And that's why really our choices today in our private vehicles, you've got some pretty neat electrical options, and we're just starting to get some other options that might make it to market in the years ahead. I look at Todd because Todd every week, every month has a new car to talk about. So there are options out there and they're getting to scale, but they're not there yet, and they're not there yet because frankly we've wasted tons of resources trying to get people out of their cars when that's all they want. That's all they want. So the first Leonard principle is that our transportation solutions and our discussions need to be customer oriented, bottom up, not top down. The second principle is that when government, when coming up with new transportation policies, does a cost-benefit analysis, it really needs to be done from the perspective of the consumer, from the driver, and not from the perspective of the government and the tax system. So here in the Inland Empire, we are blessed with a logistics industry that provides lots of jobs and frankly supplies products to the entire nation. We take credit for that. We're an intricate cog in that wheel. The businesses and their employees, who are people just like you and me, they decide the best and most efficient way to ship their product and get their product to market. We need to respect the research they've done and work with them instead of against them. Tom talked about indirect source rules, which is a potential regulation aimed directly at the heart of the economy of the Inland Empire. It is ostensibly to clean the air, but let's face it, what it would really do is drive our area back into a recession. Companies will leave. The warehouses that people speak against, what's in them now will go away. The buildings will still be there. But the jobs and the economic benefit they bring will disappear across state lines. And then what does that do to all the products that you and I here in Southern California need? It makes them more expensive to us. And frankly, it will decrease air quality because now they'll be going to states with fewer controls and fewer regulations. It's not good for the overall picture. And yet when we do the cost-benefit analysis, if we have an ISR, we'll be able to stop truck traffic, we'll lower our air pollution. Well, maybe, maybe not. But you know what we definitely do? We'll be sucking the lifeblood out of the Inland Empire economy. We don't do our cost-benefit analysis from the perspective of the consumer, the resident, or the business person. We do it from the top down, and it hurts our decision-making. Another principle that the Leonards would hold dear is that taxes that the people of California and this region say should go toward road and highway construction, operation, and maintenance should go toward road construction, operation, and maintenance and not be sucked away for other purposes. That's what people want. They want more roads to drive on. William Leonard, the senior, had a map, and it's from maybe the 1940s, 1950s. And it shows future freeways in Southern California. And you would be amazed at the number of freeways that were to crisscross the Inland Empire. You would also be amazed at how accurate that map was in predicting where people were going to want to drive. Because when you look at that map from today's perspective, all those streets that are so crowded that we complain about signal coordination and all that, that's where freeways were supposed to be. But the folks at the top in California made a decision in the 1970s that we weren't going to build freeways anymore. Mr. Leonard spent the end of his career fighting to get the Foothill Freeway built, and bless him because we can drive on that now, and how much good has that done for our region. It opened up the entire north end to homes and businesses. It has given people an option to the 10. It's let trucks mostly use the 60 so the rest of us have a way to drive in our single occupancy vehicles. People pay their gas taxes because they expect their roads to be in better condition than they are today. And we need to rethink that. We need to figure out how we pass measures that include operations and maintenance because we focused a lot on construction. But we also really need to ask people as we're spending money on rail systems, per person who uses those systems, do you get anywhere near the value that you get for investing in a road system that people use every day? Again, how many hands were raised that you drove a car today? That you'll drive a car for the rest of the week, the rest of the month, the rest of the year. That's how people want to get around. That's what they pay their taxes for. And the fourth principle I would suggest, and I've heard echoed a little bit here today, is the Leonards were innovators and technology advocates. They always had the newest gadgets. They were always early adopters. Bill would rip out articles from science magazines that I'd never heard of and suggest those as appropriate study. He was talking 30 and 40 years ago about roadbed sensors that could connect with cars of all types and allow them to use the road space more efficiently. Well, we're decades later and we don't have that yet. It exists in some people's minds, and yet we've built new roadways and new freeways and we're not trying to implement the technology that's available. How much technology, how much computing power is in the phone that's in your pocket right now? We're not harnessing that to benefit ourselves, to benefit the economy of our region. And my hope is that through these conversations that the Leonard Transportation Center is having, you'll take on some of these challenges from the Leonard's perspective. That you will get, we policymakers, some research and some data that we can actually use to make decisions unique for the Inland Empire. At the Omnitrans board meeting last month, we were talking about the ridership figures for Omnitrans, which plummeting is not an inappropriate word, I think. SBX has not met projections, and our other lines are falling in ridership. It's not because Omnitrans provides bad service. Our buses are cleaner and safer and more efficient today than they ever have been. People don't want to ride buses. So let's harness the research capability here at Cal State San Bernardino and your partners to give Omnitrans board members the information we need to make better decisions. Do you know what we had to talk about at last month's board meeting? A study done by UCLA, Institute for Transportation, about declining ridership. That should be research done here at Cal State. It should be our local people we're talking to. I asked Omnitrans, does anybody talk to the folks who decide not to ride the buses anymore? As we see that ridership decline, can we identify who's leaving? Could we go ask them why? That would be information that we as policymakers could really use. Some specific challenges to talk about I think you've hit on in your future conversations. We need to understand how toll lanes are going to affect both individual drivers and businesses. I hear very conflicting opinions out there in the public. Businesses love the idea because they want predictability. Individuals think the price is going to be absolutely outrageous and they don't plan on using it for their commute.